Dr. Robert Kiltz. Hello.
Well, it's really a pleasure, and always love watching your amazing energy and ideas and sharing health and wellness for all of us. So again, hello to both of you. You inspire all of us.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Way too kind.
Of course, the UK's, I think, the world's top nutritionist, Richard Smith, of course.
Again, way too kind. Yes. Yeah, the company is fantastic. And Dr. Kiltz, pleasure to see you again. I know we've spoken a couple of times since, but the last time that I think Stephen and I saw you in person was at the Healing Humanity event, wasn't it? In where were we? My goodness, so many events.
We were in London somewhere, right?
Just outside London, yeah.
Somewhere, right?
Yeah, thereabouts, I think, yeah. Which was fantastic, by the way, wasn't it? An incredible event.
I'm looking forward to the next visit.
Good.
I hope you'll invite me if you're doing something.
100%. 100%. I've already been speaking to Alia.
Yep. Just tell Alia, she tells me. It's all, that's the way the world
Speak to the boss. Speak to the boss.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a few house rules. If you want to put a question in the chat, try and put a Q in front of it so it pops out, because we get, we're on Facebook, YouTube, X, Richard's YouTube, Dr. Kiltz's Facebook. So yeah, just make sure there's a big queue so we can see that question. If you want to jump the queue or you want to support our work, you can with the super chat, which is exactly what Cruz has done. Gentlemen, with gratitude for all info you share with patients, healing happens within, and intentional nourishment as proper info, foods, thoughts, physical activity are critical while seeking a better state of health. TNX. So yes, thank you very much for that. That really does help.
Well appreciated. Yeah, fantastic.
Especially us small
Brilliant
channels.
It's a nice and I think that gratitude, you begin with gratitude, everything else flows from there. So I agree with that.
Absolutely. Right. Okay. Well, now this is really ironic, as Dr. Kiltz's speciality is fertility. And James has a brilliant question. I don't know if you've come across these old remedies, but anyway, let's do James's question. My beautiful wife is 6 months pregnant. She's seen recommendations that eating dates and drinking raspberry leaf tea can help with the delivery, assist the uterus contractions. Any thoughts?
Well, since most people going in through pregnancy on their standard diet, and there's lots of pregnancy-related and labor-related dystocia, dysfunctional labor, either not going into labor, slow labor, fast labor, cervix fails to dilate and or contractions fail to be produced properly to help that baby be born naturally and normally. Many drugs have been used for thousands of years in the form of herbal medicine. So raspberry leaf teas and dates and those sort of things probably have been used for that. Now, on a proper human diet like keto and carnivore, I think there's less need for those plant herbal medicines. And I generally don't recommend drinking, your drugs. Now, there certainly may be some meditative and anti-inflammatory effects of some of these things, and that's where I think they've been utilized.
Brilliant. Richard, did you want to add anything to that?
I think Dr. Kiltz has nailed it, but again, I think it's just coming back to evolution, isn't it? And what we are designed to do as a species. And I think, again, these things, and we've said many, many times that these compounds are medicines, so I'm certainly not against them. But again, I agree with Dr. Kiltz that our requirement for them is probably negated somewhat if we live a proper human diet.
And I wouldn't say, no, don't touch them. I would say that in general, small amounts, like teas, may help medicinally help you go through these things under many normal conditions. And so, that's where they may be valuable. Because I work with acupuncturists, herbalists, massage therapists, and many others in this process.
Yeah, and I think the raspberry leaf tea is a late stage thing anyway. I think after about 32 weeks is when people start taking it. And I think it might be one of those things where they take something out, like coffee, and replace it with this more or less less deleterious drink. Maybe it's just that what you're actually taking out. But anyway, that's great. Let's go to a really good question, actually. Well, they're all good questions, by the way, but this one's quite a sort of key one. This is from Imo. Can you explain about how keto adaptation works, not fat adaptation?
Well, keto is a physiologic state where technically the circulating sugars are lower. Essentially, the ketones are higher, and ketones are manufactured in the liver. And so when the liver is not busy making fat because you're eating ketogenically or carnivore wise, and carnivore is a ketogenic state essentially, you're allowing the toxic plant sugars to be reduced. And ultimately the ketones are there, but now they're in higher amounts, which says, yes, we're doing everything right and staying away from the plant sugars. So in essence, keto adaptation and fat adaptation are sort of our labeling of some things that happen in our body, which are always there in some way. You're born keto and fat adapted, no doubt about it. Ketones are a fat in the liver breaks down to make ketone bodies, which are beta hydroxybutyrate acetoacetate, which is water soluble, allows a lot of it to be delivered to the cells that need the energy. And essentially, fat breaks down to acetyl-CoA, which in the liver can become a beta hydroxybutyrate acetoacetate, circulates to the cells. So do short chain fatty acids, which are all part of the energy. So the adaptation really is when you fast, you don't eat for, to me, a day, 2 or 3, suddenly those ketones rise because the plant sugars decline. And when you eat keto-like, which I think is a high fat diet and a lower carb diet, lower plant diet, then you're essentially in that same state. And then I know Richard Smith talks about exogenous ketones. He has more knowledge and expertise than I do, and I'll defer that to him, but it sort of is going to give your cells a little bit of less of the sugars that are degrading it, and can be valuable in some cases.
Yeah, 100% completely agree. I think what I've found with fat adaptation onto keto adaptation is, and this only seems to happen if we live the lifestyle for a prolonged period of time, and it seems to move in not in a linear form. So where we begin initially, I find, is that we, as you say, we waste ketones in the form of acetone as we've become fat adapted, which is where we can, as you say, utilize stored body fat and dietary fat via beta oxidation. And we can start to burn fat fairly quickly, within a few days. Then we start to produce ketones, but we waste many of these ketones in the form of acetone. And then as the body adapts, we produce more of the beta hydroxybutyrate and waste less of the acetone. And further, and as you rightly say, the beta hydroxybutyrate in the blood will increase. So we see this initial elevated level of acetone, which is the wasted ketone through the breath and through the urine. And this comes down. So if we're testing with the urine strips of the breath monitors initially, we see higher levels of those, which we think is fantastic. Then we see the levels drop in, and we believe this to be problematic. But this is the body adapting and becoming more keto adapted. Now blood levels of BHB increase, which we test by blood monitor. Over time, what I find between 6 and 12 months is these levels of beta hydroxybutyrate start to reduce. So it almost goes full circle. And the reason for this is that the more we commit to living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle, the more we upregulate the monocarboxylate transporters and enzymes within the cell called BDHA, CAT, and SCOT. And this allows us to transport beta hydroxybutyrate and utilize them at a very high rate, giving the impression that there's less BHB within the blood. So now we think we're doing something wrong. because the BHB levels within the blood are lower. But in fact, this for me is true keto adaptation. When we get to the point where we're probably measuring somewhere between 0.2 and 0.4 by blood monitor. And it's common, and it almost seems to go full circle depending on where you are in your journey. There's no right and wrong. And I think it is dependent on where you are and what your goals are. But me now, the last time I tested, I think I was 0.2. The time before that, I think I was 0.4. I haven't been above 0.5 when I've tested for quite some time. And again, I think this is to do with the upregulation of those monocarboxylate transporters. But I think when you get to that point, that to me is full keto adaptation. But there's varying different degrees along the way, isn't there? So it's and it does mean different things for different people also.
Excellent. Okay, just to remind Richard, we have a 5-minute timer
going.
Way
less than 5 minutes,
so we can answer every question if possible. But it is also fairer for the people that come in on. So anyway, that's great. A really good answer. Nice quick one. Andy is asking, is there going to be a 24-hour live stream this year? Thanks.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we've set a date yet, Steve, have we? But
No.
We've done it twice, and both times Dr. Kiltz has been kind enough to attend. So if Dr. Kiltz is up for another 24-hour live, then I guess we have to.
And remember, I get up at 3 a.m. on the Eastern time, so.
Perfect.
Wow.
Far too early.
Excellent. Excellent. Right, here we go. Next question. We are steaming through them, actually. This one, any strategy for working out electrolyte imbalance? Tried up in salt, tried zero salt, electrolytes, tried with or without eggs, bone broth, just can't work it out.
Well, Richard, again, probably when it comes to the workout world, he's an expert at this. I just wonder, do we really measure our electrolytes and know what the real values are? Our body is magical. It is working to keep us in the zone, right? Now, if you're suddenly expiring a lot of fluids out, both from your lungs and your skin, and you're going to lose some salts in that too, there's always some recovery. And whether you're using electrolyte drinks or adding some mineral salts, I think that's real important. And then there's got to be the recovery, and it takes rest also. And I think a lot of people don't rest the body enough. I'm a napper and I'm a rester and things like that. But we sell electrolyte mix. I think it's good, but I don't know that we've ever measured people throughout the day and like, oh my God, your electrolytes are way off. I think maybe psychologically, there's something about it more than really truth in measurements. But Richard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think, if we look through the ancestral eye, if you like, we wouldn't have consumed electrolyte supplements then, and look, as you guys know, I make electrolyte supplements, so but I always give it to people straight. But what we would have done back then is we would have drunk the blood, we would have eaten the connective tissue, we would have crushed the bones and eaten the bone marrow. So we would have obtained electrolytes through adequate sources then. We don't do those things in modern life. And also our lives are no longer the same as they used to be. We'd wake up, we'd go hunting, we'd catch our food, we'd go home, we'd eat it and so on. Now, we try to hit the gym, lift heavy weights. We try to look like this, and then we try to run 26 miles in sub 6 minute miling. These things are not ancestral appropriate. I'm not saying don't do them, but I think to push to the limits on that 2% body fat isn't healthy. And I don't believe that, now that I do endurance sports, I don't believe this to be healthy for optimal health and well-being. And I think once you start to live outside of something that's ancestral appropriate, then, the potential for supplementation may come into it. But look, there's so many moving parts to this, because we do see a drop in sodium, particularly during the initial stages as insulin drops, or as insulin corrects itself, because insulin is responsible for essential hypertension. It's insulin that drives or pulls the sodium back into the blood from 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys. So as we lower, got to get that in every week. and when insulin drops, it releases the sodium and along with it, lots of other electrolytes. So in the short term, I think that supplementation can be super beneficial. Some people can come away from it. Some people, cannot. Sean Baker, we know, takes electrolytes. Our good friend Anthony Chafee doesn't use electrolytes, so it's, I do. I find that I require them, but it's very much an individual thing. But I mean, any strategy for working out imbalance, how you feel, I think, is the best way. It's without testing. When I have tested bloods, what I've noticed is that the electrolytes are higher with people living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle. Which I think should give us pause for thought, because maybe the ranges that we're looking at in the first place are incorrect. But look, it's how do you feel is the most important thing. And what we haven't got to there is whether we're cramping, suffering with palpitations, whether it's just fatigue. Chuck some more information into the chat, and we'll see if we can get to the bottom of this, because depending on the answers to those questions, I think would vary in regards to into the appropriate response to take. But just living this way generally gives us everything that we need, isn't it? But additional supplementation is sometimes required.
Yeah, nothing beats how you look, feel, sleep, your energy levels. Nothing beats that.
I saw a pic on social with Dr. Kiltz with his top off the other day, and it's like, wow, he's like ripped and chiseled.
I got Chafee out there, Baker out there, and I got Jake Thomas, and I also, of course, have Richard Smith with that picture behind. In my 70th year, never felt better in my life.
Amazing.
There's 170 years of experience on the screen right now.
Yeah.
So and the reason I'm saying that is because somebody in the chat, they've started a guess the age of Richard Smith thing.
25.
So I can't. I can't tell you my age, but there's a clue for you. There's 170 years on the screen. Right. Okay. Now then, here we go for the next question. We are all one. My wife has histamine intolerance and has a reaction from meat. Any suggestions? I mean, last week I was talking about this because a lot of people in the carnivore space use ground beef, which we call minced beef in the UK, and you can get it on demand. So if you are doing a lot of ground beef, and then you're getting it in the little plastic trays or wrapped up like that, or just pre-packed, you can say to the butcher, can you do this for me from fresh? And also the other thing is, if you buy any meats and you leave them in the fridge and you're not going to have them for a couple of days, I would actually freeze those and then cook them from frozen, because that will reduce your histamine exposure. But also look at the body, the DAO, which is the enzyme that degrades histamine. You can look at supplementation with that, or you can add kidney to your diet to get it naturally from food. But anyway, I'll pass over to the two guys there.
After you, Dr. Kiltz.
Well, I think one of the problems is cooked meat and aged meat, and not rare to raw fatty meat. And so histamine intolerance, well, it's inflammation, and your cells, your mast cells, histiocytes are reacting to something and releasing histamines, or you're ingesting foods that actually contain histamine-like substances, which cause redness, swelling, pain, heat, inflammatory or allergens, essentially. And so I say, change your meat. Some people need to go to lamb or goat or even buffalo. I do beef. That's the best. I try to get the fattiest meat. I prefer dry age, but I don't tend to have histamine allergic reaction issues, but some do. I like minced meat better than ground meat. It just sounds just nicer, by the way. But buy your beef and then mince it yourself. That's another thing that is important. But I would say you're not eating enough raw fat, and you're eating too much cooked meat or dry aged meat, and that's a big problem. If you look at Pottinger's Cats, a book written by Pottinger years ago, which showed that cooked meat and pasteurized milk were harmful to cats, versus raw milk and raw meat. And so if you think about it, when we killed and prepared the animal at home, we weren't throwing away the fat. And typically when you buy the fat, it's the meat, it doesn't have fat anymore. Plus they're raising it for less fat. And also I believe rendered fat is not as good for us as raw fat.
100%.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, we talk about that ever such a lot, don't we, Richard, about the rendered fat? I think that comes up every couple of weeks. Great answers, of course. Let's go to the next one. A newbie, I'm taking no sugars on keto diet, but when measuring blood glucose seems to be very high on occasions. We have to be careful of the word high because you've been led to believe something is high. But let's just give you context, okay? If you've got a reading of 80 milligrams per deciliter, let's say, well, that isn't much. That is about 5 grams of sugar, or a teaspoon roughly, in 5 liters of blood. So the concentration of sugar isn't that much anyway. If you then went up from 80 to 100, which people seem to worry about, that is 1/25 of a teaspoon of sugar extra in 5 liters of blood. So we have to look at these ranges slightly differently, because those ranges are based on 45 to 65% carbohydrate diets for people. These ranges have come from people not eating this way. They're not appropriate to extrapolate to the way we eat. So we do tend to have slightly higher blood sugars, but it's not high as in, you know, an emotive, frantic worry about being high. It's just being realistic. And also we have a lower insulin state, so there's less reliance on the GLUT4 transporter and more on the 13 other sort of passive diffusion transporters. So I think Dr. Kiltz has something. I can't really read it from here.
Well, it might be a little difficult. I don't know. Is it backwards or can you read the words?
Yeah, we can just about make it out, I think.
Well, the liver's job,
I can see liver. Yeah.
The liver's job is to make fat via amino acids and sugars and insulin. As the liver is damaged, the ability to quickly convert sugars to fat is slower. Sugar levels rise. Now, remember, sugars that we're talking about come from plants. And so I think when we use the word sugar, it's so confusing. We think of cane sugar, white sugar, beet sugar, right? Nobody is thinking about the fact that many of these substances, and I'm going to throw up one quick other slide. Goitrogenic foods. Those foods are known to damage your thyroid gland. I believe they also damage your liver. Liver damage causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance means your insulin is not working as well, right? It's not lowering your sugar appropriately, right? Okay, so now if your liver's damaged, your sugar levels are rising. That means what else is rising? Your insulin level. And so the confusing part of all of this is that when people say no sugars on keto diet, are they eating any of these foods? Right? A keto diet contains a lot of these, doesn't it? And these are damaging to the cells of the liver, which are responsible for converting amino acids and sugars to fat. And so measuring your glucose levels, if you have 3 meals a day, is your gut ever empty of digesting food? Never. So your sugar levels are always going to be higher, which ultimately causes the damage to the liver, insulin resistance, and all the things downstream.
Yeah, fantastic.
Did you want to add anything, Richard?
Yeah, just to jump into that. So, you know, I'm carnivore. I've gravitated into this via incremental changes, which I believe is the best approach. But But I mean, that word behind me, keto. So I was keto and not carnivore for quite some time, and I thrived. I was the healthiest and fittest that I ever was prior to that. But I persevered over many years of incremental changes, and now I found what I believe to be the magic elixir, which is carnivore. That said, I think, Bar, I think you're doing the correct thing. You're gravitating towards low carb, ketogenic way of living. I wouldn't get too caught up on blood glucose levels at the moment. I think it's more to do with there are bigger levers to pull. Now, the levers that I would prioritize over anything else are the removal of grains and the removal of the seed oils. I think these are the two single biggest levers that we can pull. Doing that and then gravitating deeper down the journey, prioritizing more animal proteins and reducing the amount of veg on your plate is going to be steps in the right direction. Now, as Dr. Kilt says, there are many veg within the remit of the keto lifestyle, which can be incredibly damaging. Broccoli, or the brassica family, as Dr. Kilt says, contains a compound called sulforaphane, which during the chewing process, when glucoraphanin binds to myrosinase, it creates a toxic compound called an isothiocyanate or sulforaphane, which blocks and competes for absorption of iodine at the thyroid and causes a whole host of problems. Now, most plants have some form of phytoalexin or plant toxin, which causes these things. But I still think incremental changes are best, but there are some that I believe are more damaging than others when it comes to the gravitation into this lifestyle. Now, keto prioritizes things like cauliflower, things like nuts and seeds, bell peppers, tomatoes for our friends in the States. All of these things are very high in lectins. And lectins bind to the insulin receptor, and they can cause 5 times higher fat storage than insulin does itself. So despite the carbohydrate value within, anything that is high in lectins can be problematic. So what I'm going to post a link into the chat, and this is a link to my shopping list for a keto lifestyle. So this isn't for carnivore. This is for someone who's gravitating into this way of living and looking to make better choices via the foods that they eat. It's a traffic light system. And the traffic light system, basically anything in green is okay for keto. And I've highlighted the things in there which are higher in lectins with an L and the things that are higher in oxalate with an O. So these you try to stay away from, but always prioritizing your plate with 3/4 of your plate in animal proteins and just 1/4 in the vegetables, while slowly gravitating towards increasing that in regards to the animal proteins if you can. That isn't a game changer. There are lots of people. Our good friend Ben Azadi lives a ketogenic lifestyle and thrives. But incremental changes. But I've popped that list into the comments. Gravitate towards the ones that are in green and avoid the ones that are in L and O, and you should be okay.
That's brilliant. I just want to say to everybody, we try to get to every single question, but we also try to answer questions properly. Full and frank answers. I just want to say, if you're enjoying what we do, Richard and I run a thing called the School Community, and on the top of the hour, we do another 30 minutes in this community where we answer questions, and we do it on a Monday night. And this is what the School Community looks like. It's there's loads of questions you can ask. We also have a classroom where you can do loads of different courses, all included in the price, free ebooks, and you just go up and up levels as you're more active. The calendar here, it just shows you this is where we are now at 7 o'clock. 8 p.m. we've got a question and answer session and another one for an hour tomorrow. That's the minimum we do. We sometimes add them as we go on a Thursday. So I will put a link in the chat for the School Community if you want to join. We were going to increase the prices in April, but we've held them for a couple of weeks as we've got Dr. Kiltz today, and we've also got Anthony Chafee next Sunday. We thought just to get as many people as possible the opportunity to join while the prices are nice and inexpensive. So I'll put a link in the chat. We will get to every question if we can, but I doubt it. There's so many questions. Thank you for all your questions. Right. Okay. This is from Robert Rogers. Richard, I know he's asking you, I want to add something from my blood lab because I did a decade of private blood testing. Richard, how does the body get rid of oxidized LDL-1 and carnivore? Thanks, Rob. That's from Robert. I just want to say, when you get a blood panel, I've been very lucky to have people with very extensive testing, and we can actually prove that the oxidized LDL does degrade. Oh, thank you very much. That is
There
my
it is.
book that Robert Kills held now.
Love
And
it.
one of the things, this is what frustrates me, is there's a thing called the plaque test. And it isn't about plaque. It's just the way they word these things to make it sound like it's about plaque. PLAC2. It looks at the lipoprotein associated phospholipase A2 enzyme. Now, that enzyme degrades oxidized LDL. And I've actually proven this with people with actual blood tests, looking at it going up, the plaque test going up. And when we look at that, why is it up? Well, it's because there's oxidized LDL. Now, when we followed that month by month, we've seen that plaque 2 enzyme stay where it is, and we've seen the oxidized LDL decrease. The problem is the way the mainstream look at it, they're pretty sort of reductive. If you've got a plaque 2 test which is high, they say you've got a high risk of cardiovascular issues or incidences, but it's misreading it, because that is the body getting rid of the oxidized LDL. But anyway, I know the question is for Richard, but it is one of my pet peeves, because I've seen it. I've seen it being reduced. I've seen it go from red to amber to green over the months. And that PLACT 2 test is just brilliant. But it's read wrong by most people. Anyway, go on, Richard. Answer the question, please.
Brilliant, Steve. I think you've covered 90% of what I was going to cover, but let's bounce it over to Dr. Kiltz, as he's the special guest.
Well, I guess the question is, what is LDL? It's a lipoprotein that it's meant to carry fats, amino acids, sugars, minerals, and vitamins from the liver. It starts as VLDL and it goes through their delivery stages, and they're made by the body. Oxidized LDL, there's going to always be some oxidation, but think of it as inflammation. So if you have a lot of damaged LDL, it's inflammation, which is mostly secondary to a high protein plant-based diet and not enough fat or fasting. And so fat and fasting will heal that. And I think it's really important. Keto, paleo, keto, carnivore are actually high fat diets. And so I always wonder, when we say focusing on protein, people then buy protein powders or they focus on lean meat. You don't want to do that. You want to focus on fatty meat as the most healthiest thing we can eat and consume, because that's what keto is. It's high fat, medium to low protein, and low to no plant sugars, in my opinion. So fat, fasting, and that'll help reduce that more than anything.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, look, it's these particles do. They don't die off per se, but they do go through a process where they're excreted from the body. So as long as we're not contributing to damaging these particles, and by which I mean causing glycation and oxidation to the ApoB100 receptor, because this is where the problems happen. Once we damage this receptor is the access card back to the liver. Once that's damaged, this is where they begin to accumulate and potentially cause problems. Living a low-carb, ketogenic, carnivore way of living, as the guys have just said, is low inflammatory. This only contributes to healthy LDL and the type of cholesterol that the body wants to make. Because cholesterol is essential for life. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones, and it's essential for healing. We cannot be without it. Make sure we remove the toxic compounds which cause this glycation and oxidative stress. And primarily, there we are, there are some of them. Grains, I think, are a massive contributor also, and vegetable oils, one of the biggest contributors. And if you don't believe me, Google search a condition called cytosterolemia, and you will find that these plant sterols are incredibly damaging to the body. So as Dr. Kiltz says, animal proteins and natural fats, I think, are the key to everything.
Well, animal fats. I would say animal fats. And think about it. Would you just walk down the street and pick plants from the street and eat them raw? No. You can eat these cooked, fermented, processed, soaked, but you must add animal fat if you want to reduce the inflammation. That's why keto is simply add a ton of fat. You'll help a lot because fat reduces inflammation in the gut. It suppresses those darn microbes that are trying to kill us. And by suppressing the microbes, you reduce fermentation, which also aids to healing the glycocalyx.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Right, let's go to the next question. Nice one here from David. Keto 3 weeks now, 95% meat, 0 carbs. got good energy in the gym, but constant brain fog. Tried Richard's electrolytes and adding extra fat, but no difference so far. So 3 weeks we're talking. Yep.
David, look, 3 weeks, it's not an awful long time. It's taken us a lifetime of what better term of a boost to get us to where we are now. So we're not going to correct this in 3 weeks. It does take a series of incremental changes. You're doing the right things. Potentially gravitated too quick, possibly, but this is difficult to say. Energy in the gym, which is fantastic, which most people suffer with, which is unusual. It's usually the other way around. The brain fog will start to lift soon. As Dr. Kilt says, fat is the key to everything. Once we upregulate the body's ability to use this fat, then we'll be able to supply this energy to the brain. And we'll get on to Dr. Kilt's book now. Fantastic.
Carnivore.
Yeah.
He says 95% meat, 0 carbs.
But
that's not 0 plants.
Yeah.
And it takes a small amount of heroin to kill us. And so my suspicion is, again, it's a high fat, low protein, medium to low protein, but get rid of the plants or coffee or teas, which may be still that. But I agree with Richard. Give it 3 more weeks.
Yeah, look, 100%. I think it's for many clients that I work with, what we don't want to do is gravitate too quick. For some people, it works incredibly well. What I find for most people is incremental changes. So I don't think there's anything you're doing quite wrong, but it is a case of further progressing down this journey and allow it. The body's going through lots of changes. The gut microbes are going through a process of die-off. The body's going through lots of changes with drops of insulin. The brain and the body's energy source is changing. So all of these things need to be upregulated. Now, there are things that you can do. If you live in a keto lifestyle, then MCT in the form of C8 can supply a good clean injection of energy pretty quickly, because C8, even in someone who is not ketogenic, will convert into ketones in the form of beta hydroxybutyrate almost immediately, because it's sent directly to the liver via the hepatic portal vein. It doesn't go through the long, laborious process that the dietary fats do. But this will give a kick of BHB and potentially allow you to lift the brain fog, at least as you transition. But look, stick with it. This is all about the rule and not the exception. This is a journey. And I think you're on the right track. So, and you're around the right company in the likes of Stephen and Dr. Kiltz
and Richard. Stick of butter.
And butter is always good.
What vegetables would you advise are the least concerning?
So I did address this one in the link that I sent in regards to the shopping list, and that's what I popped that in there for. So aim to that link. And go for those. Those are going to be the least toxic.
Excellent. Phil Escott's in the house. Hello, Phil. By the way, Paul, we guessed Dr. Abs and Lee's age. How old is Richard? I'll go first with 33 years old. But anyway, nobody else has guessed. So we'll move on. We're going to move on. Right.
I'll take that.
Vernon says, what are your views on eating raw meat, specifically beef mince? Many thanks. I've eaten it. I've videoed myself eating it. I've had raw lamb's liver, which was very fresh, by the way. I think that's very important. That was really tasty. But I'll open it up to the guys there.
After you, Dr. Kiltz.
Well, think about it. We evolved eating raw fatty meat, and eventually we figured out how to process plants that were cooked but not raw. And so I would say, eating raw fatty meat, I do all day long. That's the very best. And I usually buy it. It's shipped to me frozen. But, if your butcher just recently processed it, but, it's like eating raw meat. Again, I do all day long. Minced is great. Throw an egg in it, raw egg even. I think these are healthy things. We've been scared. We've been told never to do these things. Once again, when you eat the raw meat, you become the master of the meat.
Excellent. Right. We have a nice message for you. Dr. Kiltz and a super chat. Thank you very much. Wishing Dr. Kiltz a great turnout at Boston meetup in June. Promises to be a summit of heroes of the war against bad diet and medicine. Dr. Kiltz included.
Which is something this is something we need to speak about and tell the guys that's happening in June, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
happening in June. I don't know the exact dates. I'm bad at that. But if you go to drkiltz.com or Healing Humanity, we have our dates for our meetups around the globe. And I'm waiting for the invitation for when your next event is so I can put it on the calendar.
Fantastic. And we have been speaking to Alia about that also. But yes. So yeah.
And it's so important to come to these meetups. But listen, I tell everyone, Stephen Thomas, Richard Smith are really honest, and they're inspired to share because their time on these lives is quite amazing, and they care about your health and wellness. And I didn't learn this stuff from an MD. I learned it from people like Richard and Stephen. And so I highly recommend more and more people just get on. It's an investment to your health and wellness. Think of all the money we waste on many things. And this is healing us better than our HMO or anything else we can do.
Thank you. That's very
100%.
kind. Very kind.
Right back at you also.
Well, yes, we learn from each other. We
do.
We cross-pollinate, don't we, really? Right. Natalie is asking, and this is a strangely phrased question. Why do I not need folate on carnivore, even if I want a baby? I don't think we've ever said you don't need folate.
Well, it's in the meat.
Yes.
So the problem is, no other animal says, hey, did you get your vitamins today? Or, what about this and that, right? And so when you eat the fatty meat and likely the organ meats, sometimes at least, you're getting all the minerals and vitamins your body needs. And you're most of all not getting the toxins that are damaging. So I wonder, once again, we looked at folate as a cause, a lack of folic acid as a cause of spinal cord defects. But in fact, it may not be directly simply that, but it's the toxins that are in the plants and the lack of eating fatty red meat, organ meats. And again, I think raw to rare is way healthier. And so you do need it, but you get it from what you eat in a healthy carnivore diet. Keto, again, that's a little iffy. We sell supplements for the vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean world, but we also sell liver and organ meat supplements that I think can help with that group tremendously.
100%, which I can recommend also. Fantastic supplement. One other thing, just to add to that, if we look at folate from plant compounds, typically, it's blueberries, I think, is around 6 micrograms. A piece of beef, and that's per 100 grams. A piece of beef per 100 grams is around 3, so half. But we wouldn't just eat 100 grams of beef. We would eat maybe 500 grams of beef because we don't eat beef in nature in 100-gram portions. Other things that contain lots of folate, egg yolks, I think it's around 146 micrograms. Beef liver is incredibly high. I think it's close to 300 micrograms per 100 grams. So nature provides us with everything. So you're not going to go short of folate living a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle.
And if you get our book, it's got exactly what Richard was talking about. Look at these things, and they're far, far greater values, but they also are more bioavailable. Is that right, Richard?
100%. Yeah, for sure. These compounds found in plants, we test them and we see this amount that is found within a plant source, but many of these are bound to compounds which prevent us from absorbing much of them. And I'll give you an example in the form of vitamin B6 or pyridoxine. Pyridoxine from a plant is bound to fiber and something called pyridoxine glucoside, which basically means between the fiber and the pyridoxine glucoside, it's bound up to 85%. So 85% of and possibly beyond, 85% we know of the amount found in most plants is not bioavailable, leaving only 15%. But up to 100% of what we find in animal proteins is bioavailable.
Excellent answer. This is great, Jennifer. And I just want to thank everybody for the questions. We are trying to get through, but I don't think we will. There's many, 22, and we've only got 15 minutes to go, but we'll try to get through them. Jennifer, please share what sweeteners or additives are okay on ketogenic carnivore and which to avoid. Thank you kindly. Been loving your Keto Pro electrolytes and MCT powder.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, look, it's in an ideal world, I don't think we would consume any sweeteners. That said, I mean, I do my electrolytes, which you're consuming there, the new mango flavor, which is out, by the way. I find that the ones that are less toxic from a carnivore perspective are things like stevia, erythritol, monk fruit, glycerol. Anything else is potentially damaging. Other polyols can be absorbed by as much as 65% as carbohydrate. Others are incredibly toxic in the form of sucralose and xylitol and maltitol, which are deemed to be pretty good. These are the ones that can be absorbed by high quantities. The ones that I find are least problematic are the ones that I use, i.e. stevia, erythritol, glycerol, which is both a sweet fat and a polyol. And that's fantastic. That's what I put into the bars. Anything else? And monk fruit in the States, which we don't find in the UK, by the way. So for our friends over in America, monk fruit seems to be okay also. Aspartame, I avoid. Sucralose, anything else that is a processed artificial sugar, I would avoid. But in my own experience and with the clients from testing, these do not seem to cause a cephalic response also, a cephalic response, which is the stevia, erythritol, and the glycerol. Everything else can be problematic, but appreciate the feedback on the electrolytes. I love them also. And obviously the MCT so Andrew Scarborough, a good friend of ours, says erythritol is controversial. The study that shows this shows that we'd need to consume over 1,000 times of the amount that we would actually consume. So, I mean, we need to take a step back sometimes, I think, and look at things in real world basis. And I think these, I do unflavored electrolytes also. I use the unflavored electrolytes generally, but I do enjoy the sweet. I know Dr. Kiltz makes ice cream and indulges in it. So this exactly. So look,
time, not all the time.
Exactly.
I would rather do a natural sugar like cane sugar, honey. And I agree with what Richard said about these others. I think they're okay. But the problem is we're really working to get away from them most of the time. And you can have them sometimes. The sweets in nature were rare and seasonally for sure. And I tell people, don't drink your calories. Stay away from anything with too much too often. But I think, I sell an electrolyte with a little bit of stevia also. I think keep it low. But water, mineral water is a thing to drink. We drink too much water also. But yes. I don't think small amounts of these sugars are the cause of our disease. I think the majority of cause is low fat and eating all the time or drinking all the time. We're not meant to drink and eat all the time. We're lions. We're not sheep.
Absolutely. Right. This is very precedent because they didn't know you were on, I guess. But this is from
I did put on mine. I did put on my channel that Dr. Kiltz would be joining. So possibly this is where they're coming from.
Oh, that may be where this question comes from Lisa here. Could you cover progesterone's role in conception and delivery? It amazes me how many people are not checking this hormone in infertility.
Well, always a shout out to Carnivore coach Lisa. She's amazing and really also out there sharing her energy and her care for others. Progesterone, pro-pregnancy. Basically, estrogen prepares the uterus, you ovulate the egg, and then progesterone rises. Progesterone's job is to get the uterine lining ready for that implanting embryo and then to keep it there. I think we see a lot of dysfunction, what we call the luteal phase, the time after ovulation, either dysfunctional progesterone or low progesterone, which is often related to inflammation of the ovary, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, even the thyroid and adrenals plays a role in this. And so, you want to get your body to work naturally, then it'll ovulate properly, make the right amount of progesterones, and the progesterones will be able to bind to the epithelial endometrial cells and support that pregnancy developing early on before it sets itself in the 8 to 12 week period or after that in some cases. So get rid of inflammation. Carnivore is the top of the line. Keto is great for a lot of people. Certainly, if you're having problems ovulating, polycystic ovarian syndrome, plant-caused ovarian sickness, you want to focus on the fatty meat. Which do any meats contain known toxins?
None to my knowledge.
Maybe some fish or scallops or something. Maybe some shellfish and things, but I don't know of any meat that does. So I think fatty meat will help with that more than anything.
Yeah, especially with beef and lamb, as you rightly say. And I think you're right, 100% potentially, fish. But fish seems to be less problematic for most people. Although when you gravitate deeper towards being strict, they can seem to be problematic then. But that's probably a call for another day.
Well, my concern about fish is they're evolving in a highly toxic water world, and a lot of these toxins you can never see. Plus, who's eating the whole fish? Or are they eating the fillet, which is missing what?
The fat.
Fat. No fat in fish. Sorry, no fat in fish. The way people eat it, like lamb and beef. It's got it marbled everywhere.
Yeah, we love lamb and beef.
Right. Let's see if we can whiz through maybe 4 questions. We have 9 minutes. Let's have a look. So, Hass, gentlemen, is carnivore akin to min/maxing? Can the benefits gained be seen over a longer period if more versatility is included in a diet?
Well, versatility, I don't think is natural or normal for most animals, organisms. And I always ask people, well, what about variety? I said, are you married? And if they say yes, and I say, well, do you have boyfriends or girlfriends on the side? That's variety. It's deadly for us. And I'd say a very narrow diet is probably the best thing for us. So that's why I stick to beef, eggs, butter, some cream, occasionally my ice cream.
Yep. I'm with that. I think if you look in nature, no one says to a lion, are you bored with that? Go and have some berries and a bit of yogurt. So yeah, I'm with trying to live appropriately. Yes, Richard?
Yeah, 100%. I think there are benefits to some variety in the early stages as you adjust. But if you become carnivore and you can eat just meat, which is what I do, I have no inclination to put anything else back in. And in fact, if I do, I know all about it. It's I get severe gastro distress, I get headaches, I get itchy skin, all sorts of things. So for me, it's meat all the way. I don't believe that there's any additional benefit to be gained by being flexible with the other things that you consume.
Brilliant. Okay. Bobby, thank you very much for the $4.99. She's just saying, hi, guys. No question, which is very kind of you to do that. Let's have a look. And we've got Whip Snap. What are your thoughts on red light therapy for psoriasis? Legitimate treatment or not? I know that skin will take the longest to heal. Just wondered if I can do more to help it.
I used to have terrible psoriasis and eczema. I never did red light therapy. I was a carnivore crazy man, and the sunlight. Those are probably the best things for you. Throw some tallow on your skin. It's anti-inflammatory, and get rid of the plants. And I would say, though, I do believe there are some benefits to red light therapy, but it's not, you could do it, I think, with carnivore sunlight, but I think there can be some benefits.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the biggest lever we can pull is the diet, because remember, healthy skin begins from within. Things like psoriasis and eczema, poor skin conditions are caused by intestinal permeability, and the quickest way to heal this is by removing those toxic compounds and eating healthy fatty cuts of animal proteins. Healthy skin begins from within. Natural sunlight, as Dr. Kilt says. Red light therapy, I think, can be beneficial. Dr. Abs, our good friend Dr. Abs, is the expert on this, and he will tell you that different frequencies do make a big difference. So I wouldn't just rush out and buy any old red light piece of equipment. Check out Dr. Abs' channel, because he can guide you in the right direction should you wish to follow that protocol. But diet is the single biggest lever. Healthy skin begins from within.
Yeah, brilliant. This question. So this is how we've done. We've got this question was posted at 7:10. So we are rushing and still giving you a full answer. Everyone else, I'm really sorry. But anyway, Luke, Richard, do I remember you saying that there are a new raspberry bomb coming out? Any idea of when they will drop?
Yes, and for Dr. Kiltz, this is one of my exogenous ketones. So this is a new formula. Oh, you've tried one, Doctor. You've tried the raspberry bomb, didn't you?
Yeah. Look at, and here's an interesting part. Especially when you're younger, you have less liver damage, aka insulin resistance. You're more capable of these things. But I think the ketones can be very helpful. And maybe I can throw in the amino question. What are your thoughts on adding aminos also?
Yeah, brilliant, which I'll circle back to. But in answer to Luke's question, imminently, they're due to drop imminently. New formula, way more potent. And as I said, training with Mikey a few weeks ago, was the European champion. Won a triathlon today, by the way, by several minutes. Saw an uptick of 6 points on his performance when we use Raspberry Bomb. Addition of aminos. Yeah, I think like I used to use leucine quite regularly for repair with training. I found that to be beneficial. Other amino supplements, I feel that I personally obtain everything that I need from the diet, so I no longer supplement with leucine. I do have a pre-workout blend, which is citrulline, malate, L-arginine, beta-alanine, MCT, and something else. But again, all natural. That can be beneficial for a good workout. But beyond that, I no longer supplement with aminos, and I do make amino blends, and I do make proteins also, protein supplements for those who come from the background in which they don't want or can't consume animal proteins. So there is something for everybody, but I think animal proteins for me should always be the first port of call. Should we be able to consume them? What about you, Dr. Kiltz? Are you for any additional aminos?
Well, I don't. I think that's a question that really hasn't been answered thoroughly. I think depending, what people are eating, I think one of the questions is if you're overcooking your meat, you may be damaging what you're eating, and the aminos may be helpful. But I think the fat and the ketones are probably the most important thing to consume.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Let me just say to Cam's dad, you've done a super chat, very kind. Your white blood cells, 2.8-ish carnivore thoughts. I'd need to see all your bloods. So you can email me at zerocarbcoach, all one word, at gmail.com.
How you feeling? Panel. How you feeling? That's a real question. These lab numbers aren't, if you had a 0.008, whole different level, but low levels, again, it's all in context of how you're feeling.
Absolutely. And the last question for tonight, sorry for those that we didn't get to, do come next week. We've got Dr. Anthony Chafee. It's fabulous. We've got Dr. Robert Kiltz tonight. Last question. And get in early. You can even get on the day before and put your question on. So Ashwagandha says, I need to lose weight. I've got a meal plan that Stephen did me last year, but wondering if I can have coffee with MCT powder in just in the morning and maybe an MCT hot chocolate in the evening. What do you reckon, Richard? Yeah,
look, brilliant questions. These are all levers to potentially pull, depending on your circumstance. Look, it's MCT will ramp up ketone production, which in essence can help us with fat loss. But there's a few things in regard to this. Does your body want to lose weight yet? Has it healed? Because that is the single biggest factor. We need to heal the gut before we even attempt to look at weight loss. And weight loss is a side effect of being metabolically healthy, not the other way around. We don't lose weight to become healthy. We lose weight when we've become healthy. MCT is fantastic. It's not a magic bullet. It's not something that you're going to add to your coffee and drop pounds. But it can help with satiety. It can help supply pure clean energy to the brain, the body, and the heart. So through those mechanisms, it can help you with fat loss. Plus, it does upregulate beta oxidation and help ketone production because that's what C8 does. It's sent straight to the liver to convert insulin into ketones. And in the case of C8, it does actually ramp up ketone production endogenously, whereas the exogenous ketones do not. But that's a talk for another day. I'm conscious that we've got lots of other questions, but look, we are jumping over to our private school group in 1 minute. So if there are questions that you would like to get answered, I think we're running the promo, Steve, for another week. Are we? The $9 for the school group. So get in now, and it will remain that $9 for life.
For life, yeah.
For life.
Yeah,
So
$9
that
a
is
month.
fantastic.
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
those are
Okay. So thanks to the YouTubers that are not coming over to school, but thank you to Dr. Robert Kiltz. It's been such an honor to have you. And
Always an honor to be here. Invite me anytime. And I just love what you guys are doing and love this community. And the more we communicate, connect, helping our brothers and sisters heal, you're doing it. Thank you.
100%. Thank you, Dr. Kiltz. And we will pop the link to your meeting in Boston in the link below, in the comments below.
In the descriptions. Yeah.